The flowers are in bloom, so it's time for the Doom Room. I'm Alex, and I'm doomed.
Welcome to the Doom Room, Boom Boom. It's the Doom. I'm Justin.
I'm Pete.
And we're going to be talking about Season 1, Episode 6 of Doom Patrol, titled Doom Patrol's Patrol. That's very hard to say. I'm sorry.
See, that's why I was doing an
Patrol.
homage. I was doing an homage. With
An
my
homage
intro.
to me messing that up in the future? Nice. So, Doom Patrol, to give you a little bit of recap, if it's been a while since you watched the episode, as teased in the previous episode, we find out there is a previous Doom Patrol, not that the residents of Doom Manor are currently called the Doom Patrol. We've been calling them the Doom Patrol, but there was an actual team that Niles Calder had back in the day. They've got a very X-Men style setup at a house. We find out very quickly that it isn't real at all. It's actually been created by a guy named Mento. They're actually very, very old. It's sad. And at the end of the day, Jane discovers, as we delve pretty heavily into her flashbacks, as well as her backstory, as well as Rita's flashbacks, we find out that the whole goal here is Mr. Nobody wants to show them what a badass he is because he completely destroyed Niles' previous team. So he's like, yeah, you come after me, this is what's going to happen to you. So that's where we kind of end up. Broad overview here, but I want to take it back to the beginning of the episodes. This is important, and kick it over to Pete for whatever esoteric detail he noticed in the first 3 seconds.
I love it. Just to set that up a little bit, I think astute listeners would notice that Pete's focus is very intense in minute 1. Yeah. And then it drops off precipitously as the episode goes on.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I mean, I'm glad that we're here at this moment because I wrote down here is it, because it's the DC flip is not really right because it's like we see inside the DC logo and it's like all their toys. You know what I mean? So
yeah, it's weird. It's almost like I wouldn't call it a DC flip at all, but
yeah.
I don't know. That's just what I've been doing all along for
DC
no reason.
toy chest. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the.
This is a long-running idea on this podcast that I assume is some sort of product tie-in, or there's someone paying for this, right? Because there's no way we would do this out of just pure wanting to do it.
I certainly don't want to do it.
Is the DC flip like a Washington, D.C. like bar or something that we're promoting?
Yeah, they used to. That's the baseball team, right? Down in D.C., the D.C. Flips.
Yeah. They're very bad. They don't know what they're doing.
Terrible. Nobody likes to talk about them either.
Well, no, it is a kind of interesting start where it's like Rita's still on the bench. You know what I mean? Kind of Rita is frozen in time, and that also kind of sits with all the flashbacks that we're having here where, Trainer has to come out, LT as he's called in this episode, to kind of like be like, hey Rita, the kid's not coming back.
Even before that though, I think it's important to talk about what's going on with Rita back in 1956 because we get this flashback. She, I assume, has just blobbed out for the first time, but her career is pretty much in ruins, and she almost without hesitation decides, when a producer comes on to her, to give into it in order to get the part, but this causes her to blob out, suffocate him, and the secretary says, oh, he died of a heart attack. As we find out later, this led to some bad things for some other actresses of the time, or at least that's hinted at pretty strongly, and that's sort of the thing that Rita is grappling with at the same time she's grappling with what's going on with Elliot. Really liked what we got into here overall with Rita's character in this episode. I thought it was very smart and complicated.
Yeah, I agree. Like, we have this kind of casting couch horrible situation, and he gets trampled to death by a blob, I guess is the way smothered. I guess
blobs famously not a lot of feet.
Oh, that's true. That's a good point. Yeah, smothered, blobbed to death, which, he deserves for sure. And yeah, there's this kind of moment where she struggles with what is she going to do, and he's, patting his lap. Just awful to have to kind of like, but great outcome where Rita kind of gets to be like, hey, listen, that guy was a douche. Don't take the fall for this. Get out of here.
From the secretary?
Yeah.
Yeah. And she didn't even know about the blob.
Yeah. There you go. Classic. I just assume when anybody's died of a heart attack, it's blob related, but I don't know,
that's smart.
Yeah,
That's smart.
fair assumption. I was talking with someone yesterday, and they said that they were a cardiac doctor, and they walked in on someone having a heart attack and saved their life.
Wait, is this a true story?
This is a true story.
And then another person.
I really thought you were going to get to the blob thing in a second, but you're actually
no blob.
joking.
No blob. It just struck me with the heart attack thing. And then another person was like, my uncle gave the Heimlich and saved 2 people's life. I'm like, where are people encountering dying people? I've never walked in and been like, do you need me to save you?
Yeah,
right now?
Man, that's crazy. I almost killed our producer by shoving in front of a truck once, which is kind of the opposite thing.
It's a different thing. That's an attempted murder. That's not a life-saving moment.
Interesting. What did you think of Rita's storyline overall, though, Justin?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I mean, we get this moment at the top, like Pete said, where she's sort of in a still place thinking. And I think that's sort of what she comes to the revelation that she needs to face her issues and literally says the lines, I think maybe it's time I sat here and faced my issues. I was like, doesn't get clearer than that. Because the flashbacks are great, really interesting, and we get to see her from this horrible moment that you just described into being paired up with Mento to help, by Niles Calder, to help her with her powers. They have a relationship, and then he takes advantage of her in a sort of similar way. He pokes in on her thoughts and sees something horrible and then walks out on her. And you can see that I feel like the actress playing Rita does such a great job of the look on her face is the same. It's not a very told, like, I felt just like I did when in Hollywood, but it's just like the look on her face is this, like, I can't believe this is happening again. How can I break this pattern? And I think she is going to by facing it.
Yeah, the other thing that I think is interesting about this episode in terms of the Mento thing and the old Doom Patrol thing, full disclosure, I'm not very familiar with the very old Doom Patrol comics. I'm more familiar with the Grant Morrison run on and sort of that very genre-breaking meta thing that we're dealing with mostly in the show. So this might be one-to-one with old Doom Patrol, and an even venture that it probably is. But it definitely feels very Xavier's School for the Gifted going on here, to the point that this character seems a little bit like Professor Xavier. And I like that we're sort of riffing on that because a lot of people do draw a connection between Doom Patrol and the X-Men, even though they are at least a little bit different.
And it's all about the veneer. This whole episode also the veneer that we all put forward, and that that Mento's putting forward on this school that's not a school, and how underneath there's just a mess of problems.
Yeah. Now, Pete, did you have a problem? Speaking of problems, at all that they didn't sing Mento's theme song?
Yes, it was killing me the whole time. Somebody make some kind of joke about the fresh maker. The guy could use it. Mm-hmm. I do think though that the reveal here that Mr. Nobody is saying hey, before you come at me, guys, let me distract you with a little bit of Miles isn't the person you think he is. If you found out that your team, if Alex had a podcast before us, Justin, I would be just heartbroken. You know what I mean?
That would be crazy.
If
I had done an entirely separate Doom Patrol podcast before this Doom Patrol podcast, what a wild, sir! I couldn't even imagine what that would have been like, or what would have happened to those podcasters.
I was going to throw out, I think we're the sort of slick, cool X-Men, and later Alex will be working with a bunch of weirdos.
Oh, after I've stuck you in a house where you're aging and I stay always the same?
Yes. We're all pretty close. The real answer here is that we already are old Mento and the other two. Just live in a visual hologram being like, let's take some more press photos. And it being us just trying to get the pills in our mouth.
Oh, man. That was brutal, though, the way it was kind of
heartbreaking.
Yeah, they were like, hey, don't worry. They're just in the kind of stasis of beating themselves up over and over again, just being ridiculously hard on themselves for their past. Just absolute torture facility.
It is horrible, and the fact that we sort of leave the episode this is good. This is the best they got is devastating in its own way. But also, I think it speaks back to what the guy, I think his name was Josh, says, who's running the school or the retirement
facility.
Hell, yeah. He says, nobody sent you here to show you what the consequences are for challenging him. And I think that I take away from that, like, nobody does want to scare them, but he also is scared of them in a way. Because why take the time to be like, go look at the last Doom Patrol and see if you still want to fight me? And he must see something in them.
Also, like, I know they've been on like a bunch of crazy adventures, and there was like a donkey that farts messages.
You have really focused on the donkey. And it's pronounced donkey.
But if I was talking with somebody and then like everything in the background changed for a couple seconds, like the color, the complete look of the person I was talking to, I wouldn't just be like, oh yeah, it's just the old glitch in the Matrix, let's keep continuing down, like it was taking them a little bit.
Real quick, when there are glitches in the Matrix, you're like, there that is again. That cat walked by twice. No big deal.
Yeah, no big deal. I was just a little surprised that, there was dramatic changes for a couple seconds in parts, and everybody seemed okay with it.
I don't think so. I think every time that it happened, Larry Chater was like, what's going on? What is happening here?
This is weird.
So I thought they were kind of blatant about that. I thought, if anything, that was more an indicator to the audience that everything is not right here and this is not the actual reality. They let us get a little bit ahead of the characters. I'd also note, I don't know if you guys felt this way, this was, to me, easily the least funny episode, and so maybe this is too strong. I know Pete's going to take exception to this. Maybe not my favorite episode because it was relatively so serious.
Okay, but the butt balloon, I mean, that was pretty funny, guys. Come on. The giant butt balloon, I mean...
I know what I'm getting for you for your 50th birthday.
The butt balloon was great.
Butt balloons!
Yeah, cops that turn into pinatas, Hot Diggity by Perry Como playing in the background.
That was...
very fun.
That was... I mean, the music on this show is really great. We got a bunch of instances in this episode, but like the song to drive somebody mad by playing it over and over again was such a fun choice. That was really hilarious.
Again,
it's
it
a
was
classic
Hot Diggity by Perry Como.
It's a classic TV trope. It's called the butt balloon with a hot diggity jukebox. You see it in a lot of classic TV. I Love Lucy did it.
That was the third book in the Girl with a Dragon Tattoo series, right?
That's right. The first two are very serious, dealing with a lot of dark content, and the third one's sort of just like a fuck around.
Yeah, it's fun.
I mean,
diggity.
If you guys were in like a park setting and then you saw a butt balloon with a jukebox, would you immediately start running? Because I feel like I would.
Away or towards?
Yeah.
Away.
Towards, 100%.
Towards.
Yeah, dance party time.
No. It's clearly like something the Joker is doing or something horrible.
Take a picture for the gram. You know I'm all about that gram.
Oh, this guy's all about the gram.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You would grandma.
I'd take what is it called? Let me just research this. Selfie. I'd take a selfie.
You'd be too busy paying fucking Pokemon to look up to notice the butt balloon.
Oh, okay, Grandpa.
The layers of who's young, old, and old on this podcast is shocking.
I will say, and just to clarify, I know I mentioned this the last episode, I really do not remember what happens in these episodes at all, so I apologize if this is a spoiler in any way, but watching this episode, I was struck by, given the nonsense circumstances that Mr. Nobody is throwing at the old version of the Doom Patrol, I think it points to potentially what our new version has over the old version. The old version is much more straightforward superheroes. You got Niles with the wheelchair like Professor X. You have the rest of them like the X-Men, like we talked about. They have coordinated uniforms. They're ready to go. Granted, that might not really be what happened at all, because we know that Mento and Mr. Nobody have been futzing with everybody's memories a little bit. But this Doom Patrol, like we talked about a lot of the podcast, is a mishmash of different characters. It's a mishmash of different powers that don't necessarily go or work together as a fluid team. And given that Mr. Nobody is all about chaos, seemingly, and all about randomization, that might be what scares him about this new group, potentially.
Yeah, and I think something we talked about last time is just their capacity to get better. Like, and because he has them under his thumb because they are sort of at the mercy of their own tragedies. Yeah. But if they can start to move past them, that's where they can really maybe become a threat. And I think the reason he had this old Doom Patrol fully defeated is because they never move past their shit. Mm-hmm. As we see by the end of this episode, they are just, in full lockdown and not dealing with anything and truly are hopeless. But I mean, to your point, I think also the way Mr. Nobody acts is sort of from comic book history. Like the goofiness of old comics where like the Joker was just like had like a trick guns and flowers that squirted water. And then that changed into sort of the dark, twisted versions that we have as comics sort of got older.
Thank God, too. I mean, as we're taping this, they just revealed the look of the new Riddler and the Batman, and I'm like, thank you. Give him a weird gimp suit. That's what I've always dreamed of since I was a kid. Here's my question for the Riddler. Why not
tilting
a gimp
toward
suit?
gimp? Yeah.
Let's talk about Larry a little bit because, again, he doesn't have a huge arc in this episode, but I did feel like he is starting to work with the negative spirit, at least a little bit.
I mean, it's more of the same a little bit where the light being has to step up and save everybody's ass.
Why are you so angry?
Yeah, whose side are you on? I can't tell. You
on
seem
the
to
side
hate Larry,
of
but also you hate the negative spirit. So
No. I don't hate the negative spirit. The negative spirit, or the light being, as I like to call it, because I don't want to put any negative on that.
And honestly, Pete, you're the negative spirit
when
it comes to Larry Trainer.
Well, sure, fine. But it's obvious that this light being is a couple steps ahead of people and also like trying to do the right thing. So it'd be nice if Larry got the F out of the way and maybe let the light being lead a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, open up your heart light,
Wow.
Turn on your heart light?
Yeah.
Is that what you?
Yeah.
I think though, like the whole point of the character is that they have to work together. Mm-hmm. Because Larry's in driving a lot, and then he passes out when old Lightbright runs around.
Yeah, maybe there's some sort of metaphor with a negative spirit that's inside all of us, and we need to figure out how to work with it in order to become better people. Oh, you're giving me the finger? What? Why? Why?
Alex, I think that was the negative spirit.
Yeah, that was the negative.
And by that I mean Pete, just Pete.
Just being Pete. All right, there's a whole other plot line going on here with Cyborg and Cliff.
Before we move off, a couple other things. What do we think of the Rita Mento romance? Because I bought into it. It felt genuine in the beginning. I was sort of on board, and then in the scene where they were together and they put on their like old timey sex music, like it was really.
The only sex music I have, by the way, I know you guys wanted to know this, is Hot Diggity by Perry Como.
Yeah. No, believe when I saw you watch this episode, I could tell that
I was like, wooga, wooga.
Oh, my God.
Do you think when you put on your, like, sort of sex playlist, when you used record players, you had to get up and just keep switching it?
Yeah, when back in the day, when we just had record players, when I said, hey, I wanted to get you a mixtape, it was a stack of 20 different records. Then I'd have to manually switch song by song. Very inefficient.
You got to incorporate it into the love. Pete, what do you think?
I think this is a fun tangent. I'd like to get back to the show.
This is part of the show. This is about the Rita Mento relationship.
Well, it did start to seem sweet, but when the screen kept breaking up, I was like, no, this dude's going to be a shithole. Also, as soon as he was like, I promise I won't peek inside your brain, yeah, he's going to break that promise. You know what I mean?
I did actually have a question about Rita and Mento, or rather specifically about Mento. I know I've been harping on this a lot, but it continues to throw me how old everybody is, given that we know this Doom Patrol seemingly aged in real time, the old Doom Patrol, but our Doom Patrol that we're following did not. Is that a plot point in any way, or does it just not matter?
because I thought about this a lot. Because when Mento was still young, I was like, "What is with this show and time? It doesn't seem to affect anybody." And I thought maybe it was just like meta commentary on how comic book characters never age. Mm-hmm. But then when we find out that the other Doom Patrol actually did age, I think it's Cliff doesn't age because he's a robot. Cyborg is just young, and he is the age he is. Rita, I think, probably does age, but her blob form doesn't change because it's just her form.
And she has a mental picture of what face she's going to make, so that's not going to age.
Yeah. I, for instance, don't age because I just have a strong mental picture about who I am.
Yeah, exactly.
Every morning you look in the mirror and repeat, I look like this.
That was part
of this.
I
look like this.
What was nice about Rita taking down the pictures, I was like, okay, yeah, maybe don't have all the pictures you've ever taken of yourself up. But part of me was also worried that, like, if she doesn't have those pictures, she doesn't kind of know what to change her face into. You know what I mean?
Well, you have to have your headshots surrounding your mirror, otherwise you're not a working actor.
Oh, okay.
You guys have your headshots.
Obviously.
So if a casting director wanders in, you can be like, "Hello, sir. I'm ready to be cast in a feature film."
My kids keep asking, "Hey, why don't you have any pictures of us up? Can we put them up?" And I slap their hands and I slap the pictures out of the way. I'm like, "No, just me, me. It's just this beautiful,
Daddy's headshot.
Beautiful noggin."
You're doing a great job.
Thank you, Pete. Really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, on the aging front, Larry, I think, remains to be seen. Maybe it's the light being that is keeping him frozen in time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Also, it was a weird moment when Larry was like, "Hey, do I know you?" And the person was like, "No, you do not."
That was weird.
Yeah.
If we want to jump over and talk about Larry for this episode, there's LT. There are a couple interesting things happening here. There was that moment with Josh, Josh, mysterious character, thought he wasn't going to be not real, but he seems to be real.
Yeah.
Knows a lot, but feels very secretive, just like
has powers, but was not going to show them, or
yeah. By the end of the episode, he's like, "Oh, I have powers, but I'm not going to do them." I was like, "Come on, dude, this is your shot."
I think his powers are the butt balloon. I think that's what it was.
Oh, okay.
What do you mean by "are the butt balloon"? Like he blew it up? Because I'll tell you what, I could have the power of a butt balloon.
Yeah,
and so could you.
Yeah,
if
you
it's
go
a
to the balloon store and buy some helium, Pete.
Well, I don't know if you can order just a butt balloon at the store. So,
oh man, I cannot wait to your next special event. I'm going to show up in a butt balloon.
I assume the other thing you're going to mention about Larry is the weird symbol that he's holding at the end of the episode.
Yes, and I think my takeaway from that was that there was some time after Larry was affected by the light being, and before we catch up with him at Doom Patrol, where he did some sort of mission with the U.S. government.
Yeah.
It's what I think is really interesting about the time, the advantage there, even though I do find it confusing, is that they are able to fill in all of these different gaps and pockets and holes because there's been decades of time. And the implication of the first episode was they all stayed in Doom Manor, didn't interact with anybody, never met anybody else, doesn't know anybody else, the end. That's it. But as we slowly found out over the course of these next couple of episodes, that's not true. Every single one of them has had different things and different interactions, not just with Niles Calder, not just with Doom Manor. So to your point, yeah, I think we are going to find out something more about Larry Trader's time, and it should point in some interesting directions. Why don't we move and talk about...
Well, also, just one more thing on Larry, and then we get this...
Oh, you would love Larry.
Yeah,
I do love Larry. Well, I have to combat the negative spirit of Pete, who hates Larry.
Yep.
Pete's like a Balky guy, and I'm a Larry guy. That's the way it's always been.
Balky Blutacos.
In the perfect strangers dichotomy of understanding pop culture, a forthcoming book from yours truly.
Yes, and just to clarify on the podcast, I am the island of Meepos.
It's so true. What I was going to say is the light being does collaborate with the team in this episode. So we get a first big step. Both Rita and Larry are making big steps forward in this episode, while Cyborg is doing a sort of a separate thing, and Cliff is just treading water like he doesn't know what to do.
All right. First off, back up the truck there. That was all ridiculous. Larry is not doing shit, okay? The light being is doing all the things. Rita's making some progress. Larry ain't doing nothing, okay? And Cliff does a lot, okay? Cliff helps Vic and his dad's relationship, which is horrible, and Cliff helps them get a little bit better.
No, I disagree completely, and there's no revelation here in this episode, but it's clear Vic's dad is different, but only because Cliff is yapping it off with his little metal jaw, like that old He-Man villain, Trapjaw. And he's just someone oiled him up too much because he's flapping. And he says too much, and then Vic's dad completely changes and is definitely done something to Cyborg that is a little bit sneaky. And Cyborg does the old pickpocket, which is very hard when you're a robot, I bet, to do that without being caught. Gets the flash drive, but I think his dad is one step ahead of him. And it's Cliff's fault.
All right, no, Cliff helped in this episode. Yes, you're right. He did get a little, I don't know what flappy with the gums would be in the metal term, but
yeah.
I just
He's like a Siri who's like, hey, Siri, we don't want to talk to you.
That
Siri,
was a fun bit by Jane, and I want to talk about Jane a lot, but he helped. He was just like, somebody had to say to him, like, stop being a dick to your son, man. Like, you're awful, and he knows it, and he's lashing out against you. And then you get that beautiful hug moment, which was very sweet.
Yeah, I'm highly suspicious.
I agree with you, Justin, in terms of my suspicion about what's going on with Silas. I don't think he's trustworthy. Oh, 2 middle fingers. My goodness, Pete. Wow. Your negative spirit is out in full force today. Don't trust Silas. Do like the stuff with Cyborg and how he's forming a bond regardless with Cliff. All of the stuff about hacking was very funny. It was like, whoa, you hacked into Facehole or whatever it was.
You love when people change the name of things, so this had to be very fun for you, Alex.
But it wasn't really Facehole. It was Facebook, right? And Cliff just didn't know what it was called.
No, they called it Facehole. Like it wasn't Google. It was like Ramble search.
Ramble.
It says Facehole.
Oh, then I do love that.
Yeah, you do love that.
Gotcha.
Yes. But I like that Cyborg hacks it by creating a catfishing account for him. And we do get the cliffhanger there, no pun intended.
Oh!
Of Cliff finding out that Bump is now his daughter's dad. Oh. He's pretty upset about that.
But Bump seemed like a good guy. I mean, Bump's if anybody's going to be in charge of a child, Bump seemed like, out of all the flashbacks and the people in that flashback.
Of all my favorite things on the road, Bumps are easily my favorite, so I'm very excited about this.
Yeah. Oh, you got to meet my buddy Pothole, man. He's a disaster. Everybody hates him.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. But it was a weird moment when the dad was like, don't hang out with weirdos. Like, what was that talk?
Don't hang out with weirdos. That's pretty straightforward.
No, it's not. You know what I mean? Like, fuck you, Dad.
Wait, I thought you didn't. Are you saying you are suspicious of Silas?
Yeah, I'm saying that No, wait. What I'm saying is...
Whoa. I'm confusing me.
Yes, I am. I feel like Dad's made some progress, but that moment there was a little kind of like weird. So
nice. I like you almost gave up a little bit halfway through your last sentence. You were like, what I think is,
man.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. What
I've really stepped in it this time.
One last little thing that I wanted to mention about Cliff that I thought was nice, just on a character level. We've talked about how him going out of control and killing those dudes at Paraguay was... something beyond what he usually does, and usually he is a softie. I think we got that back here when he tries to bring the sandwiches to Jane, and he has no spine about it whatsoever. He's like, I made you all these sandwiches. She breaks them. He says, well, I'm not cleaning this up, and then immediately says, okay, fine, I'm cleaning this up. And ultimately, he's a nice guy. He does terrible things. He has done terrible things, but ultimately he is a good guy, and he's trying to be a better guy. And I think, Justin, you mentioned this a lot, but that gets to the core of all of these characters here are they're not very good people, but they're trying to be better, and that's what makes it engaging.
What more can you ask for? I have one small thing to bring up that I feel like is less and less likely to be true, but there's a weird connection. I said that maybe Jane is Cliff's daughter. And we're starting to see that the daughter has a Facebook page, so maybe that's less likely. But there's this weird connection where in the previously on, we see this moment where Cliff is like, hey, let's get pancakes right before the car accident.
Right.
And I was like, why is that in here? That's weird. And then like 2 scenes into the episode, Jane's watching the baby doll tape, and the Calder offers her pancakes.
Right.
And it was just a weird, like, too much pancakes. Like, pancakes don't come up naturally.
We talk about pancakes. We talk about pancakes a shit ton.
We haven't talked about pancakes yet. Today, for sure.
Where?
What are you talking about? We've had so many discussions about pancakes versus waffles, the silver dollar pancakes.
Over the course of years.
15 years.
Yes,
we have mentioned
newsflash.
pancakes.
Yeah. Newsflash, Pete. We've talked about fucking everything. There's not a subject in the world
you're
that
saying
we
pancakes
haven't
don't
discussed.
come up, and I'm saying pancakes come up all the time.
It came up.
I
I think
right.
what you're thinking of is you're thinking of our Cloak and Dagger podcast where they had discussions about pancakes versus waffles. We did talk about it on there because it was relevant to the show. Otherwise, I've strictly never discussed it.
He
not
refuses to
true.
talk about it.
But we talked about it in Riverdale when we were talking about the eggs, that fucking whole eggs in the farm scene, and then the
Pete
pancakes.
and I actually used to own an IHOP, I should say, so that may be what he's thinking of. Yeah. It's horribly burned down in that horrible fire, maple fire.
Oh my God, that was terrible. It smelled like butterscotch for days afterwards.
That was wonderful. It was
hard not to
the
eat
best
the
smelling
fire.
disaster I've ever been a part of.
What's just rank them, just disasters, world disasters based on how well they smell.
Well, there's obviously the maple fire at the IHOP that we ran.
Sure.
There was the cologne arsony that Alex, you and I committed, where we burned down that Drakkar Noir showroom after they fucked us out of our Drakkar Noir. There was skunk fighting ring. That was pretty fun.
That didn't smell good, though.
That's what I'm saying. We're falling down the list.
Oh, we're falling down the list.
The list is getting worse. It's
Yeah,
descending
and then
order.
Pompeii, which smelled bad.
Very bad smell. Yeah.
Ugh, gross.
Our human hair fireworks factory? That was a good idea because we have a lot of hair. The fuses are
we had
hair.
so much hair.
Hair's the original
I'll
rope.
tell you what. It smelled terrible. It was still a very nice July 4th.
Exactly. And you know what? That's what I'm saying. You got to face your tragedies and make the best of them. That's what we're doing with our
It's like that
hair
classic,
firework
yeah,
factory.
it's like that classic expression. If you got hair, make fireworks.
That's right. That's right. Classic
So
TV
anyway,
trope.
Pete,
Jane-
you want to contribute to this? Pete?
Jane,
Pete? Hey, Pete.
Jane
Pete,
in the
this is what
episode.
happens when you bring up pancakes, Pete.
And that's why we don't talk about pancakes. But anyway, I'm just saying the whole reason I started this rant was the pancake mention is a little odd. That connection point is a little odd to me, and it makes me feel like there is more of a connection between Jane and Cliff.
Or somebody who was doing the post-production on the editing found a fun little moment.
Wow.
Unlikely when it comes to a previously on.
Yes. Who else do we need to talk about? Oh, Jane. We do need to talk about Jane. You wanted to talk about Jane, Pete. Go ahead.
Yes. Shut your assholes. We're doing this. That was a real fun line by Jane. Jane had a lot
I thought that's what
Me,
you say
yeah,
when you
no.
want to talk about Jane.
No, yeah, that was just a fun moment. Her, what is this, a fucked up Rushmore was also very enjoyable. It was really cool to see Jane like go from being very powerful to be very small. The scared of the puzzles thing is an interesting kind of reveal. I feel like hopefully we'll get a little bit more kind of background on that. I mean, puzzles can be scary, but there seemed to be like a hand there, and I don't know whose hand that was.
Well, especially that puzzle seemed to have a lot of pieces, which I find that to be just stressful.
Yeah.
Yeah, you find
'Cause
the edges.
Somebody's gonna lose.
Build
one of
the
those
edges
pieces.
first, build the outside, and then work in, build some major things. She'll figure it out. It's fine.
Very hard to find the edges.
Justin, since this is your first time watching it, what's your big theory now, or any theory from that hand coming out, the guy saying, sweet baby? What do you think's happening there?
Well, now
The Jaws hand.
It very cool. That whole sequence was very cool, very well shot. I mean, something horrible. I don't even know. That hand did look oddly meaty, which actually it looked like Brendan Fraser's hand in a weird way. Like that hand, if it was meant to be a scary hand, it wasn't scary. It was like a soft, like Gronk hand, like Gronk the football player. It's like a big hand. When it wasn't as scary, it wasn't like a rough, like weird hand. You know what I mean? So I guess what I'm saying is, I'm sure it's something awful. It feels like something that happened to her when she was a kid. What are you laughing about?
You were like, it was this meaty, soft, but also Gronk hand, but not scary. You know what I mean?
Gronk has weird hand. Gronk, the football player, Rob Gronkowski, has weird big hands. Look at he's in like 50 commercials right now. Look at any commercial. It's like he's holding two, he has like hands like the foam fingers, but he has 5 fingers that work on each hand.
Interesting. I have no idea what you're talking about, but I love it.
Anyway, it feels like it's something specifically about Baby Doll. Maybe Baby Doll is one of the older personalities that from when she was young, maybe close to whatever fractured her personality back in the day. We see like the idea that Jane had a room in this place feels very strange. She seems to have lived a lot of life that we don't know about yet.
I mean, the room thing is interesting because they don't resolve that either. And she even asked the question of, wait, without actually asking it, was I being sent here to be trapped here? Was I being sent here to actually learn and grow outside of Doom Manor? And she doesn't find the answer to that. Certainly that seems something that she could bring up with Niles down the road when they eventually find him again, presuming they find him again. But it's a dramatic ... at this point.
Yeah.
One other thing that I wanted to bring up that's very casually mentioned a couple of times here in this episode and we haven't heard about before is we get a couple of references to the Brotherhood of Evil, who are the Doom Patrol's arch enemies. We get mention of the Brain, which is one of my favorite DC Comics characters. It's for those of you who don't know it out there, it's literally like a brain in a jar who is in love with a gorilla named it's Monsieur Mala, right? It's Mala in the Brain.
I thought that this was just a Brainiac like knockoff type of situation.
No. They're 2 members of the Brotherhood of Evil. So it's this brain in a jar that looks like that we see in the episode, and then a gorilla, and they're in love with each other.
Cool.
It is pretty cool.
I'm for it.
Weird that we haven't heard about it.
Well, we get the mention here. We also get the mention that Mr. Nobody was part of the Brotherhood of Evil, so that's a good tease potentially for what's coming. Other notes, other things from the episode that you guys wanted to call out? We did.
Well, we got to call out the stupid criminal spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
You get Steve again.
Animal, vegetable, mineral man comes and gets attacked by his own dinosaur head.
AKA Raptor Head Celery Hand, who, as we've established in this episode, is a tit.
Yep, a real tit. What else? Any other moments that you guys wanted to mention from the episode?
Shout out to Larry's line, "Don't make me puke in my bandages," which, yes, agreed. I really like the visual of all cops become piñatas. That was another fun second thing.
Oh, but so creepy that everybody was eating the candy.
Yeah. Well, all cops are filled with candy. That's the longer version of ACAB.
All cops are Butterfingers.
Butterfingers. Nice. We get the song "Perfect Day," a oft-used song in our geek culture. Fun. I mean, we didn't talk about Cyborg a ton, but he does seem to be moving closer to tracking down his dad, but I feel like his dad still has the upper hand.
Yeah, I do feel like, the cyborg thing, them kind of like punching each other as Robot Bros was a fun kind of moment, and I feel like Vic and Cliff hopefully can get a little bit closer and not always fight each other. But yeah, I agree with Zelvin. This was a little bit sadder of an ep. I mean, things got real crazy in this ep. You had someone slit their wrists and bleed out on the floor. this show does go to some dark places. This did have more of a somber tone to it, so I would agree with the statement of all the eps. Maybe this is not one of the best, but it did really have some funny moments.
Yeah.
You have to face down your tragedies, and that's what it's all about. Looking at stuff that's not funny sometimes.
Wow.
Nah, no thanks. Only funny stuff for me. Speaking of which, who was
We have to look at our funny tragedies, like the human hair fireworks factory burn.
Oh, that was quite the laugh. Who was most doomed this episode, Pete? Who was most doomed this episode?
That's a tough call. I'm gonna have to go with the old Doom Patrol. They're pretty doomed.
Ronnie and Raya are very doomed.
Oh man, yeah.
Mento still has a chance to pull it out, though. If he just pulls out one of his classic minty candies and tries that, he'll probably get a couple of good ideas.
Yeah, at least a wink.
Justin, what about you? Who was most doomed this episode?
I mean, we're finally starting to see some rays of light for Larry, for LT, and Rita. So not them for a change. I think it's going to have to be Cyborg. He's gonna lose a lot more, I think, before he wins because of his father, but he also feels the least ready to face down his problems because he won't even acknowledge that they exist yet.
Interesting. I'm going to give it up for Jane being most doomed in this episode. Meaty Gronk hands aside, I do think that hand coming out is pretty ominous for her. She seemed terrified hearing whatever it was or whoever it was saying sweet baby. So that should be an interesting and potentially upsetting storyline coming down the way. Yeah. And folks, that is it. If you want to support our podcast, patreon.com/comicbookclub. Also, we do a live show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. to Crowdcast and YouTube, iTunes, Android, Spotify, Stitcher, or the app of your choice to subscribe and listen to the show at Comic Book Live on Twitter, comicbookclublive.com for this podcast and many more. And now, to end the episode, a piece of advice from Pete.
Don't be afraid to turn on your heart light. Sometimes you just got to listen to your heart. Listen to your heart.
Wow. Multiple song references in that bit of advice.